President Donald Trump ratcheting up the pressure on America's trading partners to strike deals with the US or face costly consequences. Mr. Trump says at least 7 more countries can expect letters today, warning them reciprocal tariffs will kick in August the 1st if an agreement isn't reached, by which he means a trade agreement. And the president warns he has no plans to extend that deadline again. All of this as he unveils even more tariffs. Mr. Trump announcing Tuesday that copper imports will be hit with a 50% levy, though he didn't say when that would take effect. The threat caused prices of the metal to hit an all-time high. Those prices are off again a little bit today, but you get the point. President Trump also said 200% tariffs on pharmaceuticals are coming, quote, very soon. Well, my next guest has this to say about the US president's latest moves on trade and tariffs. Quote, Trump is just crazy if you actually think that what he's doing is trade policy, exclamation mark. But we shouldn't think of it like that. Think about it as a grievance, and it all makes sense. Well, we're joined now by Richard Baldwin. He's a professor of international economics, an expert in global economic policy and theory. He's also the author of The Great Trade Hack, How Trump's Trade War Fails and the World Moves On. Richard, good to have you. Let's talk about what you mean by grievance. You also write in your book, The Great Trade Hack, how President Trump's tariff blitz isn't economic strategy. It's grievance policy. Just explain what you mean by that, sir.
Sure. So anytime an economist gets on and starts talking about trade policy of Trump, they talk about erratic, chaotic, self-defeating. And that's because they're thinking about it as if it was designed to be a trade policy to do something. What it is, I believe, is it's a way of striking back at what Donald Trump views as the victimization of America, that somehow the U.S. has been taken advantage of by foreign globalist elite, and these tariffs are a way of striking back and standing up for the American middle class. They have an emotional resonance. They have a sort of emotional logic to them, which makes perfect sense. For example, you really shouldn't be listening to the words he says. So Donald Trump uses words to express his emotions, to sort of express how he's feeling, what his urges, what his gut instincts are. And sometimes he uses words that have numbers in them in order to express these feelings. But the next week, the next hour, the next month, those numbers could be entirely different. So I think we got to focus on the emotional intent of what he's doing, which is assuaging a deep sense of grievance that he thinks America has with the trading system.
Fascinating. You tweeted this after President Trump extended today's deadline until August the 1st. Quote, why did President Trump chicken out yesterday on the deadline pushed to 1st of August and on the rates substantially reduced, you say, question mark? Because tariffs are pushing up retail prices. That can't be good for his base, you say. Look, the White House categorically refutes the fact that tariffs are driving prices higher. In fact, they've said the odds of tariff-related inflation are low like pandemics and meteors, both of which, by the way, we've seen in the United States of late. And I just wonder, though, I get where you're going with this. I just wonder whether the base is really bothered about tariffs and trade at this point. They're bothered about immigration. We can see there are schisms when it comes to the big, beautiful bill, as it were. And we know that they have a problem with forever wars. But are they really that bothered about tariffs and trade? Should the White House be that bothered?
Well, so that's the second part of what's motivating trade is he doesn't want to hurt the base. But the idea that prices aren't going up is just completely false. If you look at the Federal Reserve, any of the major banks like Goldman Sachs or the World Bank, the IMF, they're all forecasting higher inflation. And you can actually even see it in retail prices. There's been research on that. But that kind of increase in cost of living, don't think about it as inflation, because those are tiny numbers. What it is how much more are you paying for the stuff you buy every week in Walmart or on Amazon? And a very large share of that stuff is coming from China or Southeast Asia, and the tariffs are starting to move up the price. So the way I think about this is Donald Trump wants to be viewed as standing up for the middle class, but he's not dogmatic. He's very pragmatic. And so when what he's doing hurts his base, he backs off a little bit. So what happened this week was that, first of all, he extended the deadline when nobody asked him to do that. He had 3 months ago said, if you don't do it, you're getting these April 2nd tariffs. Second thing he did is, instead of announcing the April 2nd tariffs, he announced lower ones. So he's, without getting any deals whatsoever, essentially negotiating with himself, because he realized these very high tariffs that he announced on April 2nd would actually hurt his base. So he moderated the rates and he extended the deadline.
Right. What he announced at the beginning of April also hit US assets very hard, stocks, bonds, and currencies very specifically. We haven't got a lot of details on these deadlines set and then extended. You've posted a Financial Times graphic, and I like this. Let's bring it up for our viewers, with your own hand-drawn annotations that show the actual versus estimated tariff rates. You titled that graphic the Taco Index, as you are pointing out in this post. This lack of clarity doesn't seem to be impacting the markets the way it was in the beginning. Can you explain that?
Sure. So part of what happened on April 2nd was an absolute shock. It was a degree of attack on the world trading system that had never happened before, not even under the Trump first administration, when he had problems with specific sectors or particular countries. This was big, bold tariffs on everybody right away that weren't expected, and the market didn't like that. Moreover, it seemed to indicate that economic policy was subject to a degree of, let's say, lack of precision or lack of planning or lack of care what the consequences would be, that scared a lot of people. That on top of a number of things like the bill worried about the fiscal deficit, made a lot of people flip out and wonder, maybe the US isn't the safe asset it used to be. Now, since then, as you showed with my tweet, what he's actually done is far more moderate than what he's been saying. And the market has since learned to not listen to the numbers he says, but looking to the intent of the words underneath. Now, there's no doubt that he likes tariffs, and tariffs are going up, but it's not in the erratic, outrageously large way they were before. And in much of what underneath the whole thing was against China, because China had the biggest deficit. China is the one that's had the fastest growing manufacturing. And China has managed to counter the United States with these export controls of rare earth magnets, which can shut down the US auto industry, for example.
The point of view of Richard Baldwin, author of The Great Trade Hack, How Trump's Trade War Failed and the World Moves On. It's good to have you. I've got a bunch of other questions. I've run out of time today with you, but we'll have you back, sir, because this story is not going away. It's good to have you. Thank you.